Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is a debut author, and the title of the book, What Goes Around by Mr. Michael Wendrop. Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Michael, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Hi there. Thanks for having me. I'm Michael Wendroff, the author of a debut thriller by the title of What Goes Around. It was recently published by Bloomsbury Publishing in the USA, UK, and Australia. It's available in audiobook, ebook, and hardcover book. It's done quite well as it's already into its third hardcover printing, so I'm happy to report that. And my agent has sold foreign translation rights to it in Hungarian, Italian, and Japanese.
Awesome. Parla italiano. Arigato gozaimasu. Hi. Thank you, Mr. Michael, for sharing your book to the world.
The
So,
other
can
thing
you
I'd like to
give?
say, if I could, is
Yes.
that today I saw on the bestseller list that the number one spot is a novel by the thriller writer J.D. Barker. And it was J.D. Barker who actually read my book and said of it, Wendroff expertly weaves a narrative that begs just one more page. So I was very happy for J.D. and happy for myself to see that this morning.
Definitely. Again, congratulations
Thank you.
for
Thank you.
sharing your debut novel to the world. So, can you give us a quick summary of what the book is about?
Sure. Well, it's a thriller. It involves some mysterious shootings in a small town. Assigned to the case to figure out what's going on are two detectives that actually hate each other. One, Jack, is kind of patterned after a Jack Reacher type from the Lee Child series, big physical guy. The other is Jill, who's all brains and beauty, and they hate each other based on some things that happened together during police academy years. And we need to find out if they're going to find this killer before they kill each other. And it delves into the mysterious world of these crazy groups such as the Boogaloo Boys and the Incels, which unfortunately are real groups out there. And there's many twists and turns. And then finally, there's what's been called a very original revelatory twist ending that is quite unique and quite fun.
Totally interesting, Mr. Michael. So the title "What Goes Around" suggests a focus on karma or consequences.
Well, it could be karma. It was actually the impetus for my writing this thriller to begin with was something that my mother said to me the second I was born, or so I'm told. I was put on her chest. She looked deeply into my eyes and she said, "Oh, how nice to see you again." And it was always that again part that intrigued me. And I always wanted to do something with that. And finally I did. And so, yeah, that's playing into the what goes around comes around and the very twisty ending.
Is the story based on real events, completely fictional, or blend of both?
It is a blend of both. The Sniper is based on a sniper case in Washington D.C. many years ago, and the these groups that I research, supremacists, they're based on the terrible events that happened in Virginia on a march a few years ago. So, I couldn't understand what was going on. So I wanted to do a lot of research to learn more about these crazy groups and how someone could actually get caught up in them. So I did use a few real events in there as I developed the rest of my fictional story.
So, Mr. Michael, who is the main character and what journey do they go through in the book?
Um, well, there's two main characters. There's the two detectives, Jack the Jack Reacher type, and then the other one, which is named Jill. And they really, the issue is, are they start out hating each other, but the question is, will that relationship evolve? I wanted to explore, whether these people can learn from each other, and I wanted to explore the idea of second choices. So I do that through them. And there's another character, which is his name is Saint, and he's caught up in some of these groups. And it's with him where I also wanted to explore the themes of learning and becoming a better person.
Certainly, a better person is our everyday goal for sure. So, what do you hope readers learn or reflect on after reading What Goes Around?
Well, I hope they enjoy the novel to begin with, because it's very fast paced, it's very exciting, and people have told me, and it's gotten really good consumer reviews. But with What Goes Around, I also wanted to leave them with the kind of ending it has. It's really to reflect and think about for long after the novel is done. So combination of a very, very entertaining, very, very fast read, a real page turner, as well as some takeaways to put some thought into.
Certainly. Totally interesting, Mr. Michael. So, how did you come up with the idea for the storyline?
Well, the idea was basically that what my mother said to me that when I was born. So I wanted to do something with that and then weave in some current events. And then from there, it's all about thinking. I mean, my process as a writer is really, um, I need to give a lot of thought to what the plot's going to be. And I'd say, there are two types of writers. There are some writers who are called pantsers. They write by the seat of their pants. They just get on their PC and start writing away with no idea where the story is going to go. And I admire that, but that's not me. I'm what's called a plotter. And so I need to plot out, do all the thinking up front. I do a lot of, pretty heavy outlining. I need to know, not only what the twist ending is going to be, but, where am I going to plant the red herrings? And, what's going to happen to all of the characters. And between plotters and pantsers, there's not one of them is right. I mean, you get bestsellers out of both methods, but for me, it's the plotting, and it's not like your characters things won't change, won't evolve over time as you start writing, because sometimes I've fallen in love with some of my characters, and if the character was supposed to have been killed off based on the plot,
Yes.
sometimes they change that. And there was another character that I also really fell in love with and was supposed to be killed. And in this instance, the character was killed. And then, for the next week, my wife's yelling at me, why are you in depression? That character's not real. But to me, the characters are real. So, so plotting is key. And then the second part is doing the research. So, when I wrote this first novel, um, ChatGPT was really in its infancy. So I was just Googling to do a lot of research. ChatGPT or other AI, well, you got to, be careful with what the research says. It's a lot more efficient. But what I found that the best research is actually talking to the types of people doing things that are in your novel. So I was able to talk to FBI agents. I was able to talk to chief of police and policemen. I was able to talk to a female detective, which for me was very important since I have one in my novel, and she gave me a lot of insights and a lot of anecdotes that did make their way into the story. So I think talking to the type of people in your stories is key. Now, I don't think I spoke to a serial killer, but you never know.
You never know. So, Mr. Michael, was there a particular scene that was especially emotional or challenging for you to write?
Um, yeah, that I mean, there was the scene where I did kill someone off, where it was very emotional for me after that, and it did. It sounds crazy, but it did take a little recovery time, and then there were some scenes where I don't want to give anything away, but where the character was maybe meeting up with someone from a past life, maybe not. But some of those things were kind of emotional for me to write.
Certainly. So was there are there specific moral lessons woven in the plot?
Um, yeah, I think the key lesson really is you're here to learn. You're here to make yourself a better person, and for that, sometimes people you have to give them a second chance, and it is a thriller, and it does have that, and and I think the other thing is that it's really about love, loss, and the unbreakable bonds that may transcend time.
Unbreakable bonds, for sure. How important was it for you to show both the positive and negative consequences of characters' actions?
Well, I think it is important to show both. I think you know what what we see in the negative actions is that sometimes, well, first you see how terrible some of them can be, but you also see how you can learn from them. And just like the issue is, do Jack and Jill, the two detectives in the case, do they learn and grow? They'll it's from their actions and from each other that we find the answer to that. But you do learn, though, overall, that there are definitely consequences to what you do. You definitely see that in the novel straight out.
Certainly, what goes around, if you had to choose one quote from the book that captures its essence, what would it be?
Um, well, the thing I mentioned that my mother said about "nice to see you again" that shows up in the book a few times, and then the other quote I like is actually the first line of the book, which is actually the same as the first chapter of the book, and the line is, um, "I'll remember the day I died for the rest of my life."
Awesome. Awesome quote. So, which character in the book do you personally relate to the most and why?
I would say that I relate to the character named Saint because he's basically a good person, but he's also very naive when young. Gets a bit caught up in things he shouldn't get caught up with. Um, he does learn his lessons, and he does end up being a really good guy, but he has to learn some tough lessons, which happens throughout, but is really revealed in the crux of the ending.
So, Mr. Michael, what will be your short term and long term goals in writing?
Well, short term is right now to make sure that this current novel, what goes around, is selling as well as it could. And it's interesting that budding writers, would be authors, should really know that writing is really only 50% of the job. The other 50% of the job is marketing your book. So you've got to get on podcasts. You've got to get bloggers to read and review your book. You've got to reach out wherever you can. For example, the local newspaper did a feature story on me and my book recently. You've got to consider paying for ads on an Amazon and a Facebook. You got to put yourself really out there. It's interesting. I do have a bit of a marketing background, and when I go to some book fairs, as I've done, and have my books there, I see all most of the other authors are sitting back in the chairs behind a table waiting for someone to come up. But I'm out there talking about my book, and I sell out every time. And so that's why my advice to authors is really proactive. Really go out there and sell your book, because just realize that that's a good part of the writing of the job.
Certainly. Certainly, marketing is one of the hardest part. But thank God I created this podcast
That's right.
to promote your book. This is podcast is created for most especially in the others for sure. So good luck to your goals, Mr. Michael. So what would be your advice for those people out there who want to write their own novels or anything else?
Well, I would say write every day. For me, I do try and get up in the morning and write. And what I do, my process is just like scribble out on a PC the story that you want to move forward. Don't worry about the writing itself, certainly not the grammar or anything like that. And then what I do is the next day I'll go back, I'll read what I wrote, and then I'll try and make it into real writing. I'll try and put in the analogies and metaphors and similes and all of that. And so I'll hone that. And then after I'm done doing that, I'll scribble out on my PC the next section of writing. And that's my process. It goes, on from there every day. Review what you did the day before and just write without worrying so much about the writing after that. And I'll do that, every day until, finally I can write my two favorite words, which are the end. But the other thing I think writers should know is that the end is really, not the end. To be successful, you really have to edit. And, first, most writers will probably have, their family read it through and they'll get some input, or they may have a writers group that'll give them input, and that's all good. That's all valuable. Um, but what I found is that it's also helpful to have what a lot of authors call beta readers. And those are people who read in your genre, like in my case, thriller books. They could be friends, and have them read through it. And I had a bunch of them read through mine here, and they gave me very very good insights, and I changed some things based on that. So do all of that before you submit your book to an agent. And once I was lucky enough to have a publisher buy my book. I thought, oh great, they bought my book. I'm done. Uh, but again, the end was not the end. I mean, boy, did I learn some new things, because I learned there are so many different types of editors. I mean, first there's the acquiring editor, so the editor that buys your book, and that editor, I would say, is more of a conceptual editor. Someone who may say, I think you need a prologue, or I think there's too much of this in the last part of the book, bring some of it forward. And then, after you go through and do that, then you find that there is a line editor. And the line editor does as it sounds, goes through every line in your book, make sure it's as good as can be. And then the third editor is really the copy editor. So the copy editor will do things like, make sure you didn't say she has green eyes in chapter 2 and blue eyes in chapter 14, and check things on, your facts. If you're dealing with guns, make sure those things are right. And then after that editing stage, there's the proofing stage, um, where they go to find any little thing. And on each of those stages, I had to reread my book. And I thought I was done. And then my publisher comes to me and says, Michael, the hard cover, typeface has just been set on what goes around. Now you have to read that to make sure the typeface, nothing didn't fall out while doing that. I can't tell you how many times I read my book. It's a good thing I liked it.
Definitely, people, the ending is only the beginning. And stop
Mm-hmm.
procrastinating. If you have the passion to write, 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 write. So, Mr. Michael, thank you for your advice. I hope people out there listening to us or watching us, please do follow Mr. Michael. And I hope you will share your talents to the world. How do you think readers will react to the ending of the story? Mr. Michael, what goes around?
Well, I think they'll be kind of shocked and surprised. But if you like the movie The Sixth Sense, you'll like this ending. It is very unusual, very original for a thriller, but fascinating. And if I could just say one more thing about giving some writers advice, it would be to always continue to work on your craft because there is definitely a craft to writing, and yes, people have different styles, but there's a craft to it, and you can learn in so many different ways. For instance, I took some courses online from video courses from Lee Child and from Harlan Coben to highly successful authors. Now, they didn't always agree with each other, but that's okay. It's good to get different points of view for sure. And then, every genre has its own conferences. Like I go to Thriller Fest in New York City, their annual conference. And there, there's plenty of seminars and talks about the craft of writing that you can learn from. And then at those events, you can socialize with other writers. And I found that the writing community is amazing. They are so nice. Everyone is so helpful. If anyone has any questions for me or needs some help, I'd be happy to do so. So there's that, and there's also local writing groups. For instance, I belong to the Florida Writers Association, and they have an annual conference too with the same type of thing: sessions where you learn and sessions where you meet other really nice people. So I would say, work on your craft, never stop learning.
Never stop learning, people. Learning must be every day. So, how do you stay inspired and motivated when writing about heavy and emotional topics?
Um, it is tough. And when I'm writing, I just make sure that I'm keeping everything authentic based on what I've researched. And sometimes, as I said, you do need a bit of a break if it's very emotional. Um, but I keep the end goal in mind, which is, I'm trying to show certain things. I'm trying to understand certain things. And, hopefully at the end, some lessons will be imparted, but, just as importantly, if not more, hoping to give the reader a very, very satisfying read.
So, Mr. Michael, do you see what goes around as a standalone story, or is there a potential for a sequel?
Um, I definitely see potential for sequels or prequels. Um, Publishers today they like authors to write in the same genre, and I love the thriller, mystery, crime novel genre. So I'll definitely continue to write in that because it's almost like establishing a brand, and I will definitely have the two main characters, the two detectives, in my next novel. I've already plotted it out because I'm a plotter and done a lot of the research. So I'm starting to write book two. But yeah, I'll definitely have the same characters and I'll still have that fast paced movement to it. Um, and I expect to use the same writing style, which for me, I write in short chapters, which I believe the readers like because I believe it really propels the story forward, and makes them feel like they're making progress. And I like to end each of my chapters with a real cliffhanger. It could be an emotional cliffhanger. It could be a physical cliffhanger, or a psychological cliffhanger. And then I like to start the next chapter with a very interesting sentence so make the reader want to keep going. And I also like to have some subplots and vary them. So I may be talking about one subplot in chapter one and a different one in chapter two, then go back to the original one in chapter three. And I'll also probably keep my point of view style, which is I like to write from different perspectives. So I'll write from the perspective of the character who is most involved, most impacted, most emotionally participating in that particular chapter or scene.
Looking forward for that sequels or prequel, Mr. Michael. But before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to some of my audiobooks, people, available on Audible. Of course, my Book 101 review series, my Book 101 review volume 3 suggestions, my Book 101 review volume 2 selected, and Book 101 review volume 1 highly recommended. These are my first season of Book 101 review, and of course my climate change book, Earth Fever, or Earth Fever, Unraveling Climate and Our Restore Our Balance, and one of my self-help books, Stand Tall, Stand Together, Breaking the Chains of Bullying, and Life is Too Short, a journey of discovery and fulfillment and joy. So please do listen to them because one of the best sellers on Audible. So
Sounds great.
thank you so much. So, Mr. Michael, for my last question for today, do you see or no? I mean, what is your writing process like for what goes around?
It's really, once we were through those steps of, plotting and researching and then writing, just to be fresh. I like to, start out in the morning writing. That's when I'm freshest, and just go ahead and, as I said, to review what I wrote before and write it. And I would say, don't take a long vacation while you're writing. I mean, you could take Christmas or New Year's off, or a holiday off. But I find, one time I took 2 weeks off from writing, and it was a bad thing. Better to keep even a little bit every day, even if it's, an hour, just to keep in the flow of things. And you'll be a lot better off if you do so.
Certainly, people, and stop procrastinating. I will say it again. If you have the talent to write, and share to the world. Mr. Michael Wendorf, thank you so much for sharing your debut novel to the world, What Goes Around. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your debut book?
Yeah, What Goes Around is available in most bookstores. You can also certainly get it on Amazon in audiobook, ebook, and hardcover, which is into its third printing, so it's selling really well. Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Michael Wendorf, because if you support him, more and more and more empowering novels to come. So, Mr. Michael, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Take care.
More to come, people. See you soon.